This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome to the latest, the freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Jerome Chirco, alongside my sidekick, my partner in crime, that is, the Doc from Doc and Jock, John Macaroon.
Vito, what's happening? Great day to record. I thought it was going to be a little bit more of a positive podcast coming off of that series victory versus the Rangers, but the opening game versus Kansas City wasn't that great. Daniel Norris wasn't awful, but he was only able to go, I think, 5 2/3, I believe. Gave up only one run, but the offense was non-existent. And again, another week, another major injury that we got to talk about. Big Vito.
Miguel Cabrera, big Miguel Cabrera. That injury, the left bicep strain, not good for your all-star slugger, triple crown threat, has won the Triple Crown, multi-time MVP award winner in the American League with the Tigers, biggest bat, most potent bat in the middle of the order. How many other ways can we describe the guy and how good he is, how valuable he is to the Tigers' middle of the lineup? So yeah, devastating blow if it is long-term. Right now they're saying day-to-day, but Doc, let me ask you this, because I think I know what I feel right now regarding it. I think it's premature, and I think they're kind of using maybe a line of BS a little bit to express the injury, to downplay it. Doc, what do you think regarding it? Are they downplaying it?
Well, I don't think so. I think that when you looked at it, you saw it could be a concern. You really were concerned if it was going to be a shoulder problem. But if it's just a bicep and it could just be a strain, you could definitely rehab it and get back. Even if it's just maybe he misses 2 to 3 games, you can be okay with it. You're going to be concerned whether it affects his swing or not. And you got to look at it like this. Is there going to be any residual damage? Because when you strain something and let's just say he tries to come back and rush to come back, then you could look to maybe Miggy further injuring himself and then really costing himself a lot of time. But I think he'll be back, and the bigger concern that the Tigers have really right now is, one, Justin Upton. I think we're going to talk about him on this podcast, and with the guests that are going to come up, we're going to talk about what is going on with Justin Upton. I mean, he's mired in a terrible slump. He comes up in situations that are important. It's not like he comes up to bat in these games with nobody on and nothing going on. He's been coming up with runners in scoring position, and he's just not been able to do much of anything. And his numbers are terrible. We're not even getting the Atlanta Braves Justin Upton. We're not even getting the San Diego Padres version of Justin Upton. The guy that is performing right now for the Detroit Tigers, maybe you could start the conversation of saying this could be the worst first season for a free agent signing that's making that much money in the entire Tigers organization history. That's how bad he's been performing. We need him to step it up. And at this point in time, you could almost say, Vito, you can't count on it anymore. This guy's been a bust.
But Doc, haven't we talked about that ad nauseum? There has been no difference.
This is the big problem.
I mean, I've hoped that he would come to life. I think you've been doubting him since early April.
I'm shocked.
But now I'm doubting him too. To sum it up, I have to.
You have to, and the problem is with the salary that he's making and the positions that he comes up to bat, he's killing the team. And they're saying that he hasn't had a day off since the All-Star break. At some point, and we've talked about it on several of the podcasts on this network, we say, listen, based on his performance, he can't be in the lineup. He can't be in this lineup. He is killing you. And no matter what amount of money he's making, he needs a week off. Take him out of the lineup. Let him sit, rest, do something to mix it up. But you're throwing him out there based on what? Based on the fact you got nobody else? Stick Moya out there. Bring somebody else up. Somebody else can go 0 for 4 in the opening round, in the opening game versus Kansas City. Justin Upton needs to perform. And so you throw him out there game in, game out, thinking that, well, he's going to turn it around. Well, we got more than 100 games to show that this guy is brutal. And I think he's on the verge of losing the fan base if he hasn't already. It's just been very frustrating. And you realize, okay, pretty much everybody in the lineup has stepped up at some point besides Justin Upton. What's the problem? What's the issue with this guy?
Tyler Collins has performed better of late, hasn't he? For the last month or so, it seems like Collins has been more reliable. And Upton's just proven commodity. Until this season, like you said, was good enough in San Diego. Not great, but good. In Atlanta, good. I mean, and then this year, despicable with that big of a contract. And I'm believing more and more now, too, as he goes into next year. And if he struggles next year at least a little bit, he's going to opt into that major long-term deal that he has on the line with the Tigers if he opts into the rest of the years on his contract with the Tigers, which is devastating for the Tigers and their salary and looking into that and what they want to do with the payroll going forward, Doc. It's horrible for that fact. So you got to take in that as well, take that into account with the Tigers and what they do payroll-wise to budget everything. Not that they've worried about it in the past, but I think they're going to worry about it more and more in the future, and now he's going to bring that down big time, Doc.
Exactly. That contract looked favorable at first because, okay, maybe after 2 years, if he performs, then, there's an incentive there. But in the end, he is not going to get that type of money anywhere else unless he has a miraculous second season with the Tigers. Then maybe he'll test the free agent waters. But I feel bad saying it, but when you were driving here and I was waiting doing prep, you know what thought creeped into my spirit? I'm like, is there anything the Tigers can do to kind of maybe cause him to get upset with the organization so he'll opt out? You can't sit him because then what's he going to do then? He'll get upset and frustrated and just say, no, I'm staying. Because he's not going to get this money anywhere. We're stuck. I'm literally going to believe that this guy's going to be with us for the next 5 seasons. Full on, take all the money, and it's unfortunate that this deal, the first big deal that Al Avila, brought to the organization, has turned out this horribly because we need him. You won 2 out of 3 versus Texas, and now you're in a stretch where you're going to play a lot of home games. You were swept in the series prior to Texas by the Mariners, but, in the end, you had a 2-4 road trip like we said last week.
Mm-hmm, we did call that.
Now, this week is a very important series versus Kansas City, then Boston, who you're going up against, head-to-head in the wild card race. So Justin Upton can't take this kind of time off. Justin Upton cannot perform at this level, and the fans of the Detroit Tigers can't expect success if he's going to perform like that.
The thing is, I know people were joking about it on 97.1 The Ticket. I think Jamie Samuelson brought it up on Jamie and Wojo yesterday that Upton should be the one that's demoted when Maben's called back up to the majors. Realistically, based on performance, right? There's no doubt about it. But the salary that Upton is making now on a daily basis, all that money he's accumulating is the reason why he'll stay up in the majors and really still doesn't have to worry about his job status. So, and he's playing all this time, too, because of that injury still. He's been playing, what you said, every day since a certain point in time in the season, and almost every day all year long, obviously, outside of a few games here and there. Well, that's because he's making a lot of money, and then the Tigers have had those injuries piled up. Maben was hurt earlier, now hurt again, so you got to play up, too. You only got Collins, really, to rely upon in the outfield along with JD, and JD was hurt. So all these guys have been hurt, which is the reason why Upton has received a lot of big-time playing time and too much PT of late with all his struggles. And we thought he was coming out of this big-time slump this year, right, in July when he hit 278. Now, what is he hitting? Below 278 so far in August, and we're almost done with the month of August now. So it's a shame to the Tigers and all the money they invested in him, Doc.
And see, here's the problem when you have a guy slumping that big. You got a situation where you're paying him a lot of money. You got a situation when he comes up, we need him to get at least some hits. Daniel Norris's performance on Monday wasn't that bad. It wasn't that great. But you had a situation now where we could have been talking about a situation where you had back-to-back shutouts with Boyd and Fulmer, and Norris could have got another victory if the offense would have supported him. 1 run? Seriously? That's what you do in your first game back? It's unacceptable, and we could have been talking about the great performances by the 3 new young starting pitchers. But no, we're talking about a loss in the opening game of the series versus Kansas City because the offense didn't show up and wasn't consistent enough. It's a shame, and it's unfortunate because now you're looking at the ramifications and the big spending that the Tigers have employed for the last few seasons can't be sustained. And now you're going to have maybe a contract that you go, man, this could be one of the bad contracts in all of Major League Baseball.
And they'd be all right now if it wasn't for Upton's struggles and all the injuries. Cabby being hurt is another topic, as we've already discussed, could be long-term and devastating if it is long-term. But right now, as they're structured right now, the big league club, it's all right if they get healthy because the rotation, as you said, is coming to 4 maybe. So once they get Jay Zim back, you might have 3 quality starters ahead of Jay Zim. Jay Zim could maybe even slide into that almost a 4th starter role. And he's that veteran still, so would be pegged ahead of of Matt Boyd in the rotation, but Matt Boyd has come to form, and it seems like the rotation as a whole is coming to life outside of Anibal Sanchez and his stinky start against the Rangers this past series before facing the Royals. So that was the only downfall, really, of the rotation in recent memory, because even Norris was good enough, realistically. Had 4 walks Monday night against the Royals, but wasn't horrible to where the Tigers really should have lost that game with all their good bats, and despite even the injury, all the injuries. Now, despite the injury to Miggy, you could even say they should have won that game because he pitched so well. So they got the youngsters pitching well of late, and JV looking like an ace once again. So they should be clicking on all cylinders right now. But instead, Doc, because of Upton's struggles, all the injuries, now a potential injury, long-term one, to Miggy, this team is maybe going downhill at the most horrible time of the season as they near now the stretch run where they're trying to make that final push to get into the playoffs, Doc.
Well, you still have the benefit of a month left in the season after, August, and maybe you get some of these guys back, and maybe you get the injuries out of the way before September. You got the September call-ups, a renewed sense of urgency, and I kind of got a feeling the Tigers are going to go on 1 or 2 more runs, and it's just going to be important that when the runs come, that Cleveland has to start losing, because right now, based on the standings, the Tigers are going to have to play well above a 550 clip in order to catch them to win the division. Now, can you get in through the wild card? Yes, but you're still going to face stiff competition from Boston. So it's starting to look like the division race is slowly but surely going to be farther back in the window, and it's not going to happen. But if you can make a push, a strong push, and get everybody back healthy for the September rush, I think you got a chance, and I think we have an opportunity maybe to see young emerging stars on this team. But if the offense isn't going to support the pitching staff, it's just going to be a big, huge problem, because it was touted that the Tigers' offense was going to be there, and you just can't have one significant piece, a guy making $20 million plus, playing like that. So it's just a really tough start to the series, and it was just disappointing to see that with Justin Upton.
The rotation's been doing better of late than the lineup. The offense is our potent part of the team, right? Is the biggest, the most explosive unit on the ball club this season. Yet that has been the most disappointing of late, it seems like, more regularly than the rotation, which you thought, well, wouldn't be this good. Now it has been, and now the offense is imploding and not showing up consistently. And that's a part of the Tigers' inconsistencies all season long, as we've seen and discussed on this very podcast, Doc.
The sign of a bad team is you can't put it all together when you need to. And unfortunately, Cleveland has had their hiccups, but as we sit now, they still got a significant lead over the Tigers in the AL Central. So it's just disappointing right now that that's how you came out after winning the series versus Texas. It was a nice series victory, and we'll talk about it maybe later in the podcast, but you need to definitely consider where you're going to try to improve, who's going to step up if this team is going to, maintain the level that they're, that everyone's expecting from them.
Doc, let's talk about Boston and Big Poppy's legacy in Beantown now with our next guest, our first guest of the podcast, as we'll be joined by Ryan Ford of the Detroit Free Press after this quick commercial break here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. Looking for team apparel for your high school, your club sports team, or corporation? Then look no further than Top Cat Sales, located on the east side of Main Street in downtown Arroyo Loc, between 11 and 12 Mile. Through founder and former University of Michigan quarterback John Wangler's leadership, Top Cat Sales has developed a tradition of selling and distributing custom Adidas team apparel with the very highest quality and the very best service. Get your organization, school, or club team all in with Adidas today by going online to TopCatTeamSales.com. Once again, the website is TopCatTeamSales.com. And remember to follow Top Cat Sales on Twitter at Team Top Cat. And now, joining me on episode number 53 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company is my man, Ryan Ford from the Detroit Free Press. Ryan, how's it going today?
It's going pretty good.
So, Ryan, we got to start off with the disappointing news regarding Miguel Cabrera getting hurt Monday night against the Royals. What did you think about that when you saw him leave the game prematurely?
I was hoping that it was just precautionary measures. They didn't want to take any chances, even in a close game, of him suffering any long-term damage. So it's a little rough, Have they actually announced? I'm sorry, I haven't heard. Have they announced what it was?
They just said the left bicep strain, and it's day-to-day. I know they said that yesterday, day-to-day, and then they came out with the left bicep strain issue regarding Mickey. So, I mean, it might not be anything long-term, and we're hoping for the best-case scenario with Miggy and the injury now. But I'm believing, with that being said, Ryan, don't you think he'll have to miss a little bit of time at least, though?
Probably a couple days. I mean, I know you'll want to get back in there. I mean, the team's still in the thick of the playoff chase. I mean, and Miggy doesn't like to miss time. I mean, he's getting older. He gets injured a little more. The recovery time takes a little more time. But, I got to think he'll try and at least be in there.
Ryan, I saw that you did a gizmo in the Sunday Sports section, a very good one on David Ortiz and his home runs. His prowess for hitting home runs at Comerica Park has 21 in his big league career. So very, very impressive in terms of that for Big Papi, who's been impressive his whole entire Major League Baseball career. And with that being said, Ryan, what do you think is his lasting legacy once he leaves the game, which we've come to know as being at the end of this season?
Well, I guess his lasting legacy, it pains me. Well, it's a thing where I think a lot of people will think of him as the greatest designated hitter of all time, and a guy who really took full advantage of playing DH. I say it pains me because being a Mariners fan, I stump for Edgar Martinez every chance I can get, and I mean, in my mind, he's the greatest designated hitter of all time. To be fair, baseball actually named the award for the best designated hitter every year after Edgar Martinez. So someone in baseball agrees, but Edgar is coming up on his 10th year of eligibility for the Hall of Fame, his last after the rule change next year. So, and I don't think he'll get the votes necessary. So he'll have to wait a few years, where I'm pretty sure Ortiz will go into the Hall of Fame. If not on the first ballot, then probably on the second.
And Ryan, we have the Tigers facing the Bo Sox this upcoming weekend at Comerica. And with that being said, the Tigers have Matt Boyd, Michael Fulmer, Daniel Norris, and Justin Verlander going in the 4-game set against the Red Sox. And how do you think those guys will fare against Big Papi?
Well, if you're going to beat him, beating him with lefties is probably the way to go. And so having Boyd and Norris go in the 4-game series helps. That said, he's still OPSing above 800 against lefties this season. So I wouldn't say you stop him, you just contain him. I mean, he's absolutely crushing right-handed pitching, so that'll be a challenge. I know he has, I believe, 2 career home runs off of Justin Verlander, so that isn't necessarily a solution. But, I think the key is, well, like any hitter, try to limit the damage they can do. I'm sure he'll grab it. I'm sure he'll hit at least one more home run, just, pulling it to right field. But if they can just keep him to that, it's easier said than done, I suppose, especially considering the strength of the Boston's lineup.
Ryan, I would love to see him grab some bench in this series against the Tigers, but I don't see that happening against the Tigers this upcoming weekend. And with that being said about the Tigers pitchers who are facing Big Papi coming up here, you have Matt Boyd, as I said, you have Fulmer, Verlander, the big 3 right now in the Tigers rotation. How confident are you in that trio? And especially, let's talk about Matt Boyd. How confident right now are you in Boyd with his recent production?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, going into Texas and shutting down that offense, that's a heck of an achievement. Whether he can do it again against Boston, he'll be at home, that helps. Park's a little bigger here than it was in Texas or in Boston, so that's a good thing to see. But I'd be surprised if he pitches that well again. That was a start where everything seemed to go right. But if he can get him 6 innings, 2-run ball, that is more than enough.
And then you have Rick Porcello going for the Bo Sox, a former Tiger, on Friday night against the Tigers. What do you think will happen in that matchup?
That's going to be a heck of a game. He's sneakily having kind of a Cy Young caliber year. I mean, not to say wins and losses are the end-all, be-all. I mean, obviously they're not, especially in current voting, but he's got 16 wins, 3.3 ERA, which I believe is in the top 10. He's kind of turned into the pitcher that Boston thought they would be when they gave him a $20+ million extension a couple of years ago.
He's been their true ace so far this season. David Price, a former Tiger, another former Tiger in the Bo Sox rotation, has been rather disappointing up to this point in Beantown. What do you expect from Price going forward in a Boston Red Sox uniform in 2016?
I mean, I think he'll turn it around. He's David Price. I'm inclined to go with his past history over a shorter sample this year. And to be honest, I mean, I think they didn't entirely sign him for the regular season. It's one of those things where you sign a guy like that for playoff performance. And right now, Boston's in the second spot in the wild card, so they'd be in right now. And you get there, and you have Price or you have Porcello going, you're doing all right.
Yeah, you would be, definitely. And I kind of like the Tigers' duo at the top, too. But really looking now at the Tigers' injuries that have piled up in recent memory, can the Tigers keep contending for a wild card spot for the division crown in the AL Central with all the injuries?
That's going to be the challenge. I mean, losing guys like Pelfrey, okay, that's not so much of a loss, although it does sort of, damage the back end of your rotation and a little bit of the front end of your bullpen. But yeah, they need guys like Iglesias to get healthy, and just getting Castellanos back. If he ends up missing just 4 weeks, that's huge. If he ends up missing 8 weeks, that could be a killer. Just because I don't entirely know how long the three-headed monster of McGee, Aviles, and Romine can handle it out at third.
Uh-huh. Yeah, what a three-headed monster that is out of those three guys, too. With that being said, Ryan, and with that, I will let you go here on this edition of Tigers Talk. Thanks, as usual, for the insight, and you have a good one.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
And thanks to Ryan Ford of the Detroit Free Press once again for joining us here on episode 53 of Tigers Talk. And next on Chirco and Company, continuing our baseball discussion, will be Aaron McMahon from MLive.com, joining us courtesy, too, of the Top Cat Sales phone line. And now joining us here on episode 53 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company is Aaron McMahon for the McMahon Chronicles, courtesy of the Top Cat Sales phone line, and he is of MLive.com. Aaron, what's going on today?
Not much. We don't have much. There's a lot of rain out there, but I'm living.
Yeah, I've seen the rain, don't like the rain, never do, and never will, Aaron, with that being said. Now, the Tigers, we got to discuss lots of injury news and notes, and the most recent one, the biggest one of late, has been the injury to Miguel Cabrera. He's listed right now as day-to-day. What do you think that means in the grand scheme of things, though, Aaron?
Yeah, they said last night day-to-day, and, to be honest with you, I don't see it being much more than that. As you saw last night, the injury kind of happened there in the first inning. And then they let him, take 2 at-bats and play 3 more innings. So I would suspect if it was a legitimate, serious injury, long-term thing, he probably would have been taken out right away. It was clear he could still play. And in fact, Brad Austin said after the game that Miguel wanted to take an at-bat or 2. So he clearly, he was a little bit of pain, but I don't think it's anything serious. After the game, they even said he'd be day-to-day, and Brad wouldn't be surprised if he's able to play today.
What's your bold prediction, though, regarding the injury? Does he miss any time because of it?
Yeah, I don't suspect him being out long. I would maybe today just out of precaution, but I don't see it being a long-term thing. I really don't.
And now we know with Nick Castellanos, the third baseman of the Tigers, that it will be rather long-term, at least 4 weeks when he went on the DL. Now, do you think that injury to Castellanos will be of the caliber that could kill the Tigers' playoff chances? And along with the injury to Cameron Maybin as well?
That's a good question, and it sure doesn't help. Castellanos' bat is, I don't want to say been a surprise, but he's outperforming anybody's projections this season. In terms of not only his numbers at the plate, but his power numbers. I mean, his home run total and RBIs have been crucial this year. He still hasn't. I know he hasn't picked up a ball. He's still kind of working on, running and things like that. But he's not anywhere near game shape, so it's gonna be a while for him. Cameron Maybin, Brad said before the game yesterday, actually he's feeling the best he has in a while now. He should be able to begin. He should begin his hitting progression here either probably today, I think it was. So I would be surprised to see him back in the lineup. Maybe come this weekend. That
would be huge going up against the Bo Sox, who have a potent lineup that the Tigers have to face, and at least they have their great trio of starting pitchers going in that series in Matt Boyd, Fulmer Friday night, and JV in the series finale on Sunday. Now, how do you like that trio and how it stacks up against the rest of the Major League Baseball right now and against the Red Sox in this upcoming series?
Yeah, I said this yesterday, but I think this weekend series is going to be crucial for them. If you count yesterday, 18 of these next 22 games are against teams under 500. The only difference being the Red Sox, and obviously the Red Sox are a team that the Tigers are behind here in the AL wild card chase. So it's going to be a big series for them. I think at worst you've got to split, if not, take three or four. Yeah, and their young guys have been doing well. I know Daniel Norris wasn't happy with the start last night, but he's coming around. Michael Fulmer obviously has been a surprise, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him get pushed back during a couple starts. I don't think it's going to happen as soon as this weekend, but it's going to happen soon. And Matt Boyd's kind of starting to come around too. And he's a guy that Tigers kind of been waiting for to kind of come around. He's developed that slider. His fastball's obviously always been pretty good. So he's a guy you're going to need a good start from. They got one out of him the other day. So it's going to be this weekend. I think might be the turning point of the season.
Yeah, and Aaron, Brad Ausmus and the Tigers will be doing something rather shortly here with Michael Fulmer and regulating his innings and are limiting them to a certain degree, and probably by skipping a few starts coming up in the near future too. Now, what I have a beef with, though, regarding Ausmus and his handling of Michael Fulmer is him pitching Fulmer for a complete game Sunday when it was a 7-0 ball game and there was nothing on the line. No, it wasn't a tight game situation, and they still left him out there for all those pitches and the 9 full innings. Now, that's my beef. Did you have a problem with him being used in that manner?
Yeah, that's a good thing. And I wasn't at the game when it happened, obviously, but I was watching on TV, and I remember saying to my roommate, I didn't quite understand either. If you've got a guy on a pitch limit or innings limit or whatever the case may be, why throw him out there for the ninth or even the eighth when you're up, significant runs? It's just a shutout at that point. Brad kind of addressed that after the game the other night and then again yesterday. He joked, I think in the eighth inning, he said he looked over to Lamont. He kind of said that Michael wasn't making it easy for them. And Brad said, the game was in Texas. Fulmer had family and friends in the crowd. He had a shutout going. They weren't really concerned about his pitch count, at least in the game. So that wasn't a concern. So he kind of, I think he did it more or less as a favor to Fulmer. That being said, if you're being cautious about a guy's arm and his innings and everything else, you wonder why you sent him out there. There's really no need. Tigers are up 7-0 at that point, and the game is pretty much out of reach. That being said, I guess I understand where Brad was coming from. You got family and friends, and you're having an incredible year. I guess I don't see an issue with it. At the same time, it kind of gives the bullpen a rest too, and bullpen's a little banged up themselves.
Aaron McMahon of the McMahon Chronicles segment from MLive.com, and on with me, courtesy of the Top Cat Sales phone line. And Aaron, wanted to ask you now regarding Michael Fulmer with his AL best ERA right now. Is he a true AL Cy Young candidate?
That's a good question, and actually we asked Brad that yesterday before the game, and he thought yes. I'm going to say at this point, yeah. I mean, his innings total, I think, are a little bit down compared to maybe some of the other guys. But at the same time, his numbers have been fantastic. And he's done against some good hitting teams. And it's weird too. If you look at a lot of his starts, he said more starts on the road than at home. So he's doing it on the road most of the time too, which is kind of pretty impressive in itself. So I would say yes. Whether he gets it or not, I doubt it. I mean, I think he's a good candidate for obviously Rookie of the Year, and I think he's got a really good shot at that. And in fact, I would be surprised if he doesn't get it at this point. But Cy Young's a little bit of a stretch. I mean, you got to keep in mind that's considered for rare company and everything. He obviously doesn't have the name, the name value and everything else yet. But I think he'll be in the mix. He'll be in the discussion. Whether he gets it or not is a different story. But yeah, I would say yeah.
And the Tigers are facing two other possible AL Cy Young candidates in Tuesday night's KC starter, Danny Duffy, and then facing Rick Porcello of the Bo Sox, a former Tiger, on Friday night at Copa. So two guys right there. And what do you think, Aaron, about Tuesday night's outcome? Do the Tigers win that ball game?
Yeah. Verlander goes to tonight, and I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair. I'd be surprised if you get more than 6 or 8 runs total. I mean, among the two teams, it should be a pitching duel. I'd be surprised if there's anything less. Verlander's good, and it seems like when Verlander goes up against, I guess tip-top opposing pitching, he tends to up the game a little bit. Not that he hasn't really this season, but he tends to come ready to throw. So it should be a good game to watch. I'm excited for it. It's a game Tigers really need to win.
Aaron McMahon from MLive.com. I'm with me, courtesy of the Top Cat Sales phone line. And Aaron, how do you think the Tigers will fare against the Bo Sox coming up this weekend in that 4-game set?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it's something that they've got to win. Like I said earlier, at worst split, you'll have some good pitchers going. It is at home, which is good. The nice thing, and this kind of was some drama yesterday. Dave Dombrowski, former Tigers general manager now at Boston, told the Boston Herald that they're they're a little upset. The Thursday's game, which is game one of the series, is a 1 o'clock start. Boston's coming from Baltimore the night before. They played a makeup game yesterday in Cleveland, so they'll be playing in 4 cities in 5 days, I believe it is. So Boston's a little hurt that Thursday game starts at 1 o'clock. They could play in advance for the Tigers. They'll be at home, they'll sleep in their own beds and everything else. And you can't discount the travel issue there. I mean, baseball's such a you're constantly playing all the time, and when you're shifting cities so quickly, it has a toll. You saw it earlier in the season with the Tigers on the West Coast and everything else. But no, I think Tigers at least have to split. Anything worse, not only are you losing ground in the wild card, but you're losing chances, at wins. You got to win at home, especially down the stretch. They've got a lot of games at home, which plays their advantage. So they've got at worst got to split, if not 3 or 4.
And Aaron, at home is where the Tigers have done great so far this season. And regarding that time change that the Bo Sox wanted on Thursday for the game, boo-hoo. I say, I don't feel bad, don't feel sad at all about the Bo Sox not getting their way. So anyways, another guy who I haven't always felt bad about is Tim Tebow and his football struggles, not being able to throw a pigskin very accurately. Well, he's trying to transition to baseball now. Do you think he can cut the mustard seed to make it to the major league level with a ball club?
I really don't know. I haven't seen Tim Tebow play baseball in person, so it's hard for me to say. I will say this, he's got the name value. Everybody knows who he is. So I think that'll get him, that'll give him some tryouts, and teams will, look at him and give him a shot. Whether he's baseball ready is a different story. It's easy for, just to say, I can go up there and hit a baseball or, field a ground ball, or the case may be, and actually get in the major leagues and do it. You see a lot of guys hang around the minor league, AA, AAA, their entire career. They play baseball their entire lives. They can't get up there. So it's going to be an uphill climb for him. I think he'll get a shot. Whether he makes it to the major leagues, I'd say no at this point.
But maybe he can be better than, number 23, Michael Jordan in the minors. I would say aim for that. You can be better than MJ at something. And that might be it for Tebow.
Yeah. Again, Jordan's another situation where, he had the name down and everything else, and he thought he could, use that to his advantage. And he did for a little bit, but, clearly, baseball and basketball, and it's easy to succeed or at least have some type of career in one sport, and then transition that to another. I mean, that's difficult to do in any realm of life, really.
Aaron McMahon from MLive.com, and now the new Pistons beat writer for MLive.com. I want to congratulate you about that as well. I don't think I have yet when you've been on here for the McMahon Chronicles on Tigers Talk.
Yeah, thanks, Theo. It's good to be with you, and I'm sure I'll talk to you again later this season.
We'll be in touch again soon. You have a good one. I'll talk to you.
All right. Thanks, Theo.
And once again, thank you to Aaron McMahon from MLive.com for joining me, courtesy of the Top Cat Sales phone line, and as part of the McMahon Chronicles segment here on Tigers Talk. It's been a long time where we haven't talked to Aaron McMahon on this very podcast, Doc, and wanted to once again give him some big-time congratulatory praise on his new position at MLive.com as the Pistons beat writer. And, Doc, maybe you guys at Doc and Jock can have him on for a Pistons segment, too, in the near future.
No doubt about it. I'm really happy that you made a contact with Aaron. He seems like he knows his stuff, and he definitely gives us great insight regarding the Tigers and now the Pistons, and I think he'll be featured on this network quite a bit, and I'm glad he has the McMahon Chronicle segment, courtesy of the Top
Cat Sales phone line.
It sounds good,
How about
right?
that? It does sound, it has a nice ring to it, Doc.
Aaron brought a lot to the table and a lot to chomp on. So the first thing I guess that we got to look at is the 3 pitchers that were brought in from the Hall from Dave Dombrowski. I know a lot of people might have not respected Dave, the former general manager of the Detroit Tigers, but what he did was, in his final moves, he brought in a Hall for the future, and it looks pretty bright when you go into Texas with Boyd and Fulmer, and no runs are given up, and Daniel Norris has not that great of an outing, only gives up 1 run versus Kansas City, and everyone's kind of getting excited going, oh my goodness, if JV and Zimmerman come back, maybe in the stretch run, you could go with that 5. Are you confident at all? Those 5, if you go Zimmerman, Verlander, Fulmer, Boyd, Norris, could do the job. Maybe not in 2016, but if you go with that, is that going to be the starting 5 in 2017, you think?
Could very well be, because why would you want Anibal Sanchez in the rotation for 2017 or Mike Pelfrey? I think both could be done causes, out of here after 2016 concludes, which would be the right move to make for the Tigers and Al Avila, the guy making those decisions with the ball club. So I could see that very well being the 5 man rotation in 2017, and that would be, I think, the best case scenario. But let me put the brakes on this scenario, and that's because of the big salary for Pelfrey, for Anibal Sanchez. You realistically, Doc, because of those two factors, or that one major factor with the salary of both guys, you can't cut both guys. You can't dispose of both at the same time. That's my opinion. I think they could get rid of one of them in the offseason, but getting rid of both, that will be tough for Al Avila and company in the Tigers front office.
Yeah, they were impressive. How impressed were you with the Tigers over the weekend versus Texas? I mean, that first game was a little bit disappointing, but then you go, well, this is going to look like an uphill climb to win the series when you throw Boyd out there. And the stuff that Boyd was featuring was out of this world. And, John Keating asked him after the game, is that the best game you've ever played as a baseball player? And he was very, congratulatory of the team and the defense and the game that was called, so it was just a great performance. And then you follow that up with Fulmer on Sunday, and he was just smooth. He was comfortable, and to go back-to-back shutouts on the road versus Texas, you got to give the Tigers credit, to at least salvage 2 wins on that road trip.
And look at this, too, with Matt Boyd. His ERA has dropped from 5.77, and actually dating that back to a start before the start in which he came into or had a 5.77 ERA. So let's date back to June 18th. That's when he had a 6.44 ERA on the season to his name. And now he has lowered that ERA from 6.44 on June 18th to 4.16 as of Sunday, or as of his most recent outing, in which he got it done, Matt Boyd. And surprisingly, in my opinion, how well he looked on the mound. And he went seven full innings and only 2 hits allowed. I mean, that's solid. And he was K-ing guys in that last half inning, too, in which he faced the Rangers, the mighty Rangers lineup. So that was mightily impressive out of Matt Boyd, who, I'm going to rely upon more and more as the season goes along. And the Tigers, I believe, will as well. And why shouldn't they, right? When your other options are just Stinko, Anibal Sanchez, Pelfrey when he comes back from the DL, who they've missed a little bit, but luckily, because Boyd's been so great of late, they haven't really missed Mike Pelfrey. They really haven't. And even Zimmerman, they haven't missed as much as they would have. Because you know what? We saw what Jay Zim was when he came back from the DL. He wasn't ready. He rushed himself back and was miserable there on that Thursday day game. So we need him coming back and being fully healthy, as I've talked about ad nauseum in the past on this very podcast. So if he does come back and is healthy, then they do have a solid 5-man rotation if Boyd also keeps it up. And if Fulmer does, who we've loved to this point, and that complete game shutout, how great was that on Sunday against the Rangers to allow the Tigers to salvage 2 out of 3 and win the series subsequently against Tejas in Texas. So that was a great series victory. But the thing is, Fulmer keeping that kind of production up where he's been of the AL Cy Young caliber, we always, I guess, bring this point up too, but with all the innings he's thrown, it'll be hard for him to keep it up even, as good as he is. So I'm still saying maybe pump the brakes a little bit on him and his production and what you expect out of him going forward too because of that.
See, now, a follower on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast had asked us, like he said, I want to get your guys' opinion on what's more important, either whether to monitor his pitch count or whether to monitor the innings count. And there was a great article that I found that said that, when they did the research, there's really no statistical evidence that shows, using an innings count causes statistically more injuries to pitchers, and that organizations need to use it on a case-by-case basis, and that it's much more important to look at the pitcher's makeup and to be, careful as to utilize them in the best way for each individual pitcher. And so with Michael Fulmer, I would agree with those that say, well, you didn't really need to bring him in the 9th because you had a 7-run lead. You could have even thrown Mark Lowe out there. I think that was within the threshold of being able to bring in Lowe. 7 runs, I think, either
that's enough cushion.
I think the rule now is with Mark Lowe is if the team's down 5 runs or up 5 runs, that's Mark Lowe time. And so when Michael Fulmer was brought back, I was like, well, I get it now. And I guess Aaron said that there was family there, and so they allowed it to happen. But I think we do not need to handle Fulmer with kid gloves. He's built athletically. You see, he's comfortable. He hasn't faded yet.
He hasn't faded yet. That's key word, faded yet.
But don't you think in between starts, they're not really throwing him out there to do significant work? That he's doing his work, but he's not like going all the way in between the 5 days. Come on. I think they're handling him perfectly. According to what they're doing, I don't see any problems yet. And so I think we don't have to handle Fulmer with kid gloves.
No.
We got to start in our hands. But if you want to skip another start now this week or let him pitch versus Boston, then take a rest, I don't think you have to handle Michael Fulmer with kid gloves. He'll be okay. Don't be scared. He doesn't have the big contract yet. He hasn't signed on the dotted line. So don't be scared. follow the plan, and when things are going well, I think he'll be okay.
You can't operate timidly as a ball club with a good starting pitcher like Michael Fulmer, who's an AL Cy Young candidate now. Not just an AL Rookie of the Year favorite, but AL Cy Young candidate at least. So I want him pitching every fifth day, and I will allow the Tigers for the Tigers to skip a few starts with Michael Fulmer down the stretch because they're keeping his innings limit or keeping that at something that is manageable for him as a rookie starting arm. Thing is, though, I wanted to bring up the fact that Aaron McMahon brought up, and I had heard about this being the case, that Sunday was a game in which Michael Fulmer had his family and friends there. But are you more worried about that, satisfying his family and friends, or the ball club that is paying him? Not a lot of money, as you said, still rookie contract, so low money, but come on, man. Are you caring about the family and them being satisfied? He already had gone 8, pitched shutout baseball. That was good enough. 8 innings of him. That's good enough for me with Michael Fulmer. When you're in a run and a hunt right now for the wild card, at least the wild card, if not the division crown in the AL Central, you got to worry about that more than satisfying the family and friends, Doc.
Yeah, I would argue I wouldn't have said that publicly if that even was the truth. But in the end, it's unfortunate to say it, but a Michael Fulmer that's thrown 94 pitches is still better than anything the Tigers have in the bullpen. And so if I'm Brad Ausmus, but
7-0, it's not a tight ball game. The game's not on the line. I say if the game's on the line, then you start. You keep pitching them into the 9th inning. If it's 3-2 or something, then you keep pitching them.
I would, if I got grilled, I would say, listen, I truly believe in my starter. Michael Fulmer is the man. He was pitching great. I had no reason to believe that going to the bullpen, who I believe needed a rest, would have really helped us. Michael Fulmer did the job, and we really count on our starters to do that. This is Major League Baseball, and I trust in my starter, and that's what we did. And we got the bullpen rest. Let's move on. Next question.
That's my beef, though. I'll keep it as my beef, to them throwing him out there way too long. Going 9 innings, Michael Fulmer did on Sunday against Texas, in a game where they shouldn't have had him out there in a 7-0 ball game. He already had pitched 8 brilliant innings. Don't risk it with him going into the 9th. I mean, I know he didn't pitch a brilliant 9th, by the way. 8 innings was long enough for me. That's all I'm saying.
Let's do a quick status check.
Yeah.
K-Rod, you trust him now in the bullpen?
Not as much anymore.
Shane Green, trust him?
I was going to say something about him. I trust him, and I think they need him back. I mean, after what happened Monday night when they had to use Blaine Hardy in that situation, well, the Tigers didn't score runs anyway. They wouldn't have won the ball game. But Shane Green, much more effective than Blaine Hardy in the late innings. We know that much. So I do trust him, yes.
Blaine Hardy, you trust him?
No.
Jay Wilson, you trust him?
Yes.
A. Wilson, you trust him?
Yes.
Bruce Rondon, now do you trust him?
No, still don't. You know me, man. I will dog him all day long. Now, you love him. And you probably love him more than ever before now, huh?
Let's be fair and objective, Vito. His last couple performances weren't that bad. Now has he done enough to earn your respect yet? Maybe not, but he's getting there. And now maybe he'll have more motivation now that he's a proud papa for the first time, I believe. So we'll see how Bruce Rondon happens. But you did say no quite a bit there. I heard a lot of no.
Well, I said no to K-Rod. I don't trust Blaine Hardy, K-Rod right now, or Bruce Rondon. I trust Alex Wilson, Justin Wilson. Kyle Ryan, I do a little bit. I respect him more and more. I do. I respect him more than Rondon, too. And more than Blaine Hardy even right now. And Hardy was a lot better, heck of a lot better last year than Kyle Ryan. I'll give Blaine Hardy that much credit.
Vito, listen, the bullpen's shitty, and I would just...
It's not. I don't think it's that bad. It's not a garbage. It's not a dumpster fire. It's not anymore. It was last year. It's not as bad. That's strengthened. I'll keep saying that. And also the rotation with Boyd pitching as well as he is, and if Zimmerman comes back fully healthy and pitching effectively as a healthy arm every 5th day for the Tigers in that rotation, they got a solid then 1 through 5. They really potentially do. Because if you get Zimmerman back and healthy and pitching effectively, you've got him, JV, Fulmer, who I still trust in going forward, even though I have my doubts here and there about his innings and how Red Ausmus is using them. And you have Matt Boyd as well. That's how many effective arms right there. JV, Fulmer, Zimmerman, Boyd. That's 4 guys right there that I totally trust in Doc. I'll say that much. So I like that 1 through 4. And then Norris isn't horrible as a 5th starter. Now, if he's your 4th or 3rd starter right now, and especially this season, for all the injuries he's experienced and gone through, I would say, no, I don't trust that 1 through 5 then. But him being utilized as that 5th starter when Zimmerman's an effective veteran number 3, and then Boyd is a more than effective number 4, I like that rotation for a stretch run. I really do. And I don't know if I could have seen myself saying that at the beginning of this season, Doc. I'll say this much right now. I did not expect to say that at the beginning of the season, that I could have seen the Tigers having a fully effective almost 1 through 5 with everybody being healthy of the guys that I just mentioned, Doc. So that's big time. That's a big time thing for the Tigers. But now it's, as we talked about earlier in the podcast, their hitters not producing. You get all their rotation arms finally producing and looking stud-like. And now you got the lineup looking un-bona fide stud-like and big time for the most part, Doc.
Vito, I have to agree with you. The starters are doing a good job. Now you just need the offense to support. And what they did in Texas was awesome. It was great to see Ian Kinsler muscle up there versus old team, and that trade is bona fide in the Tigers' favor. Unfortunately for Texas, Prince Fielder is going to retire due to his neck injury. Unfortunately, we kind of needed him to kind of officially say he was going to be retired, but the Tigers still got to pay more than $20 million. As part of the agreement that they had to pay some of the Prince Fielder contract. But it was great to see J.D. Martinez flex up. It was great to see the offense do some things versus Texas. The starters, they're doing a decent job. They're keeping you in ball games.
They are.
You have to wait and see when these guys come back, like a Zimmerman, like a Cabrera. And when they come back, how are they going to affect this team? You need Cameron Maben back. You need the guys that are hurt to come back to make this stretch run and to really try to get into the postseason. And then when you get into the postseason, a lot of teams could do a lot worse than Zimmerman, Verlander, Fulmer. Hell,
absolutely.
You could even argue that by the time the playoffs roll out, you might move Fulmer up to the second spot.
I think he is the second best starter right now. I think he should be that number 2 starter and would be in the postseason too if they made it that far. And let's pump the brakes on that happening as well right now because they need those guys getting back and being healthy and effective at the same time. And Matt Boyd, by the end of the season, could be an effective number 4 even more than we already think he is currently, and could have a sub-4 ERA with that being said, which is extremely effective, or an extreme indicator of an effective starting arm. That could be at number 3, just as a veteran, J-Zim is at number 3. But the thing is, for me with the Tigers, to sum all this up and end this edition of the podcast, Tigers need their guys getting back and being effective, J-Zim. Maben, now coming back, and when he does, it's not going to be prolonged. He should be back this week, as Aaron McMahon said. And that means, well, we need him being effective as soon as maybe this Boston Red Sox series, if he is back for that series. So he has to be effective right away. Castellanos, he hopefully is not out more than 4 weeks. He's already been out for how many? 2 weeks now, about, let's say. If he's out more than 4, then Tigers, I don't think, get in to the postseason. And if Maben's not effective, it's like any of those things, big-time variables, not working in the Tigers' favor, then the Tigers probably don't make the postseason. They don't have much of a leeway, in my opinion. And I think, do you agree with that? They don't have much of a leeway if Maben doesn't come back and comes back and isn't effective, when he does come back. That's, I think, already a reason why the Tigers miss out. And if Castellanos, misses more than 4 weeks, same thing. And if J-Zim, if any of those guys, when they come back, isn't effective, I think you can almost guarantee the Tigers don't make it into the playoffs this year.
So how do you see this week shaking out for the Detroit Tigers? Kansas City, 2 more games, and a series, 4-game series at home versus the Boston Red Sox.
Well, they're not facing David Price, but he's been struggling, and now they're not facing Stephen Wright, the knuckleballer of the Bo Sox, who looks like, the Tim Wakefield of their rotation. Now, they killed him, remember, at Fenway in that 3-game series earlier on this season, so I would have liked to have seen him now in that game on Thursday. Clay Buchholz is starting in his place. Buchholz, you could bomb as well. So the Tigers, I think, still will split to sum it up. And because they have, remember, Matt Boyd, who's this effective starter all of a sudden, going Thursday against Buchholz. I like that matchup. You have Fulmer against Porcello Friday. That's a good matchup on paper. Sunday is Verlander. And then mixed in between there on Saturday is Daniel Norris. So you could split, and you could even win 3 out of 4. Doc, what do you think?
Vito, I'm going to agree with you. You have to go into any series right now with the Tigers just based upon what they're doing, collectively, offense, defense, pitching, consistent hitting at the right time. You have to go into most series kind of hoping that they get a split. They're playing at home where they played much better, so I'm going to go out on a limb this week. I'm going to say they're going to lose the series to Kansas City. They're going to go 1-2 versus them, and they're going to go 3-1 versus the Boston Red Sox. Because that's what they do. They have up and down series. I think that's how it's going to go the rest of the way. And it's going to be great to see at the end of the season how this shakes out. Because this is right now probably getting to the point now where the fire on the stove is getting turned on and the water is now in the pot. And we're about to get to the point where it's boiling. And we're going to see if this team is going to either handle it, cook the great food, or make it spoiled. And if they don't make the postseason, everybody's going to be disappointed.
Ausmus is gone, right? I think so.
I hope so.
Yeah, if we all hope so here
if they don't
on
make
this podcast.
Yeah, if they don't make the postseason, you have to believe that the decision will be made not to fire him, just not to renew his contract. And
Which is firing him in so many words.
Let's be accurate, Vito.
Yeah.
fair.
But you can spin that as them firing him because if they're not renewing his contract, they don't want him as being part of the ball club. Anyways, but I know what you mean. Technically, yeah.
It's just not, hey, we're not firing him. His contract ran up, his services were done, and we're going to go in a different direction. That's how they'll handle it. They will not say he was fired. They will not say it. They'll say that we've chosen not to renew the contract of Brett Ausmus. Let's bring in someone new, young, and exciting that can do the job.
Or just old and proven. Buck Showalter, Joe Madden, they're not coming here, though, more than likely. So anyways, to sum up, I wanted to say really quick, this week, you were kind of saying how it could prove to be the end of the Tigers, could be the demise of the Tigers, and, well, be the end of them if they do poorly. I think that will be the case where they do poorly this week. It's the end, could spell the end of the season for the Tigers of their playoff hopes specifically for this season. So they got to do somewhat well this week or they could be done. And that's because of all the injuries that have stacked up at the same time going into this week's matchups with the Royals in the 3-game series and against the Red Sox in the 4-game set. But at least, as you said, they've been good in the past at home this season. So they could be in line for some very nice home cooking. With the series against the Royals and Red Sox both being at Copa. So it could go either way, but I'm saying if it goes in the negative route, their season could almost be done, Doc.
Now, Vito, great first 2 editions of Take Me Out to the Ball Game. I really enjoyed both editions. Do we have somebody this week singing Take Me Out to the Ball Game?
I'm going to let you down. Unless you want to sing with me. And I thought as a parody thing or funny thing, we should sing it together, or I should or something, on a future edition of Tigers Talk, too.
Why not?
We should just do it, right?
Hey, if you got the musical talents, I don't know, are you good with the musical editing type thing where we'll sing it and you put the music under it?
No, I haven't tried that out. I can edit a podcast. I know that much now, but no prior experience in music editing. So I probably would sound crappy, and you and I together probably would even sound crappier. No offense to you, but...
Okay, so then what we'll do then, we just have to find and upload for next week maybe if we don't have somebody. Then what you'll do is bring the Take Me Out to the music, and we'll play it on the background next week maybe, and we'll do it as a joke or something like that.
We can. That would be fun. Good fun that Steve Cementi probably would enjoy thoroughly, too.
All right, so we'll put that on hold. We'll see if anybody else sends you a copy of Take Me Out to the Ball Game. But another great podcast, sir. You got anything exciting going on the rest of this week that people need to know about?
This week, I'm doing the Free Press blog.
Thursday?
The Tigers game on Thursday, so chat with me in the Tigers blog at the Free Press. So Thursday afternoon during the Red Sox game. I think you will, or at least somebody will, more than maybe I've gotten in the past for a day baseball game, which you don't get a lot. It's the case with the matinee baseball game, I guess.
No, that's good. And next week we'll talk a little bit about your last 2 experiences because there were some great messages that came across that I was following. It was cool. It was good stuff.
Can be fun, can be very fun and lively if the guys that are in the blog with me, the women and men, are engaging. If they're not there engaging with me, then it's me talking about myself. And I could just talk to myself without doing the blog. It can be that boring. Yeah, at times too. But there's nobody really engaging with me in the blog.
The last one that you did was really good. People were asking you like what restaurants you like to go to, where you were hanging out.
Yeah.
Someone was sharing stories about some conquests. It was great.
It was weird at times. Then I thought, is it you or your cronies or something getting in the mix? I mean, it enlivened everything. Yeah. Spiced it up, and I like that.
No, of course. What I did was, what happens is when I tweeted out there for you, it goes out to the masses, then you're going to get people from all over the country, all over the world. I think someone from Vegas messaged you or something like that.
Anybody that's a Tigers fan or just wants to chat that sees our tweet, your retweet of the blog link, and I get more attention that way and more chatter, and it's more fun.
I try to help you out. I try to help you out. So, no, I got in there. I asked you a question.
I saw you ask me something.
Yeah,
were you as Doc? Did you put
Doc in Sterling Heights?
Yeah,
that was me. And you answered the question. So all we try to do is get you engagement, sir. That's what we try to do.
Doc, thank you very much. Thank you very much to Ryan Ford of the Detroit Free Press, to Aaron McMahon for joining me, courtesy of the Top Cat Sales phone line for the McMahon Chronicles segment, and he is from mlive.com. Thanks to both of those gentlemen, and to all of you guys listening to episode 53. We will be back next Wednesday for another edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. Have a good one.